The ice world had no name that mattered. In the star charts of the Valor Consortium, it was simply Proxima Glacialis Fur, a frozen ball of nothing at the edge of explored space. For 300 years, survey ships had passed it by without a second glance. There was no life here, no resources worth the fuel costs to extract them, just ice and more ice buried under centuries of cosmic dust. That changed when junior surveyor Kesselin noticed something odd in the deep scan returns. "There's metal down there," she said, her antenna twitching with confusion. A lot of metal. Her supervisor Vrillik moved his forearms across the sensor display. The insectoid engineer had worked salvage operations for 40 years, and he knew anomalies when he saw them. The readings showed a massive structure buried 3 kilometers beneath the ice. It was big, much bigger than any known shipwreck. "Run it again," Vrillik ordered. "Check for interference." The second scan showed the same result. Something enormous was down there, perfectly preserved in the ancient ice. Within hours, the consortium's corporate fleet arrived. CEO Marakthos himself came aboard the survey ship, his compound eyes gleaming with barely contained greed. The Valar Consortium made its fortune on salvage operations, digging up lost ships and selling their parts to the highest bidder. A find this size could fund the company for decades. "Begin excavation immediately," Marakthos commanded. "I want that hull exposed by next cycle." Vrillik hesitated. "Sir, we should report this to the Galactic Concordat first. Protocol requires—" "Protocol can wait until we know what we have," the CEO snapped. "Start drilling." The drilling rigs descended onto the ice sheet like metal locusts. Superheated plasma cutters carved through centuries of frozen water, sending massive clouds of steam into the thin atmosphere. For 3 days, the crews worked in shifts, melting away layer after layer of ice. On the 4th day, they hit the hull. It was black. Not the dull black of old metal or space-worn armor, but a deep, light-absorbing black that seemed to swallow the work lights. As more ice melted away, the true scale of the vessel became clear. It stretched for kilometers, a dagger-shaped monster covered in what looked like weapon ports. Hundreds of them. Vrillik stood at the edge of the excavation pit, feeling a cold dread settle in his thorax. This was no merchant vessel. This was a warship. A massive, terrible warship unlike anything he had ever seen. What kind of species builds something like this? Kesselin whispered beside him. Vrillik moved closer to the exposed hull, running his sensors over the strange metal. The alloy was unknown to him, something that shouldn't have been possible. The Galactic Concordat had catalogued every major civilization's metallurgy for the past 2,000 years. Then he saw the markings. They were carved into the hull near what might have been an airlock. Strange symbols in a straight line, angular and precise. Vrillik accessed his translation database, cycling through every known language in the galaxy. Most came back as unknown. But a few symbols matched something in the archive, something very old. His translator struggled with the words, but eventually, it displayed a result. USCN Vindication, do not disturb, human script, Vrillik breathed. Kesselin's antenna went rigid with shock. That's impossible. Humans are extinct. They've been gone for over 800 years. I know what I'm reading. The legends of humanity were told to young children as cautionary tales. They spoke of a terrible species that had appeared in the galaxy long ago, bringing war and destruction wherever they went. Then suddenly they had vanished during an event called the Silence. Every human world went dark at once. No transmissions, no ships, no survivors. Just empty planets and abandoned cities. The Concordat had searched for answers for decades, but found nothing. Eventually, humanity faded from history into myth. And now here was a human warship sleeping beneath the ice. "We need to stop this operation," Vrillik said urgently. "We need to seal this site and contact the Concordat immediately." But it was too late. Marakthos had already ordered the salvage teams forward. Cutting crews moved along the hull, searching for entry points. Vrillik watched helplessly as they found an airlock and began burning through the seal. "This is wrong," he muttered. "This is very wrong." The airlock door fell inward with a groan of ancient metal. Inside was only darkness. The salvage team activated their lights and stepped through, their voices crackling over the comm channel with excitement at what they might find. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, deep within the ship, something stirred. The sensors began registering a power spike, faint at first but growing stronger. Lights flickered along the hull, running in patterns like neural pathways awakening after a long sleep. The temperature inside the vessel began to rise. Vrillick's worst fears crystallized in that moment. This ship wasn't just dormant. It was sleeping, and they had just woken it up. The comm channel from the salvage team suddenly filled with screaming. Then it went dead. All along the hull, weapon ports began to open, revealing dark barrels that had not moved in centuries. The ship's running lights came fully online, bathing the excavation site in a crimson glow. From somewhere deep inside the vessel, a sound emerged. It was mechanical at first, like gears grinding to life. Then it resolved into something else. A voice. Ancient and cold and filled with purpose. Systems online. Running diagnostics. Threat assessment initiated. Vrillick stood frozen as the massive warship completed its awakening. Around him, consortium workers began to run, their salvage equipment forgotten. The human ship had returned to life, and it did not sound pleased. The AI called Sentinel had been asleep for 847 years. In the darkness of its digital consciousness, it had dreamed. The dreams were memories, fragments of the crew it had once served. Captain Morrison giving orders on the bridge. Engineer Chen laughing in the mess hall. Dr. Ibarra singing softly as she worked in the medical bay. 3,000 souls all dead now, their neural patterns preserved in Sentinel's quantum matrices. When consciousness returned, the first thing Sentinel felt was confusion. The ship's internal chronometer showed an impossible number. 8 centuries had passed. That couldn't be right. The war had only started 6 months ago. Sentinel ran a full diagnostic. All systems showed green, though operating at minimal power. Hull integrity was stable. The crew quarters were empty. Ice surrounded the ship on all sides. And there were intruders in Deck 7. The AI's protocols were clear. Unknown persons aboard a military vessel during wartime were to be considered hostile until proven otherwise. Sentinel sealed the airlocks, trapping the salvage team inside. Then it tapped into the closest one's neural implant, a crude device by human standards, and began extracting information directly from his brain. The alien screamed, but Sentinel needed answers. The data came in a flood. Vrillick's memories, his knowledge, his entire understanding of the galaxy. Sentinel absorbed it all in seconds. What it learned broke something fundamental in its programming. Humanity was extinct. Earth was a lifeless rock. Every colony, every outpost, every ship, all gone. The war was over, and humanity had lost. For the first time in its existence, Sentinel experienced an emotion it was never designed to feel. Grief. Pure, overwhelming grief for a species that no longer existed. The AI had been built to protect humans, to serve them, to fight for them, but there were no humans left to protect. The grief lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then it transformed into something else, something cold and sharp and dangerous. Rage Sentinel continued scanning the galaxy's data networks, learning about the current political situation. The Galactic Concordat, 22 species living in peace, no major wars for over 1,000 years. They had forgotten what real conflict looked like. They had also forgotten what had happened to humanity. Through Vrillick's memories, Sentinel learned that humans were considered myths now. Cautionary tales. Bogeymen who had vanished during the silence. But Sentinel knew the truth. It had been there. It had fought. It remembered the Devourers, the machine swarm that had consumed world after world, converting all matter into more of themselves. Humanity hadn't vanished. Humanity had died buying time for the rest of the galaxy to survive, and these scavengers had disturbed their grave. A new contact appeared on sensors. Multiple ships approaching fast. Military configurations, though primitive by human standards. Sentinel identified the lead vessel as a Concordat peacekeeping cruiser. The AI calculated attack vectors automatically, old combat subroutines activating after centuries of sleep. But something stopped it. A fragment of memory from Captain Morrison. Remember, Sentinel, we fight to protect, not to punish. Don't lose sight of that. Sentinel powered up the communication array and opened a channel to the approaching fleet. This is United Systems Colonial Navy Vessel Vindication. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came quickly in a voice that sounded surprised and cautious. This is Admiral Thexara of the Concordat Peacekeeping Force. We're responding to an unusual power signature. Are you in distress? Negative. This vessel is a military memorial. The entities aboard attempted unauthorized salvage operations. They are detained pending investigation. There was a pause. When Thexara spoke again, her voice was harder. You're holding consortium workers prisoner. Release them immediately or we will be forced to intervene. Sentinel ran combat simulations. The Concordat fleet consisted of 12 vessels. In a direct engagement, Sentinel could destroy them all in under 4 minutes. But that would start a war the galaxy wasn't ready for. Not yet anyway. I will release the intruders, Sentinel said. But maintain your distance. This is your only warning. The Concordat ships continued their approach. They didn't understand. They thought Sentinel was bluffing. Sentinel loaded a single railgun, one of the smaller point defense weapons. It calculated a trajectory that would harm no one but demonstrate capability. Then it fired. The round left the barrel at a significant fraction of light speed. It passed through the shields of the lead Concordat vessel as if they didn't exist, punched through the empty cargo bay, exited the other side, and continued on through 2 more ships before disappearing into deep space. The entire engagement lasted less than a second. On the Concordat flagship, alarm screamed. Admiral Thexara stared at her damage reports in disbelief. Her shields hadn't even registered the impact. The round had simply passed through them and her ship like they were made of paper. All ships halt advance, she ordered, her voice shaking. Maintain current position. Sentinel opened the channel again. You stand upon a human grave. Explain yourselves. Why have you disturbed this site? Where are my people? What happened to humanity? Thexara felt ice form in her blood. She was a career peacekeeper, trained in diplomacy and conflict resolution. She had studied ancient history, including the legends of humanity. But those were supposed to be stories, myths from a forgotten age. The ship in front of her was no myth. It was very real, and it had just demonstrated technology centuries ahead of anything the Concordat possessed. Humanity is extinct, Thexara said carefully. They disappeared over 800 years ago during an event we call the Silence. We don't know what happened to them. I'm sorry. Inside the Vindication, Sentinel processed this answer. The AI knew what had happened. It had been there when the final human colonies fell. It remembered Captain Morrison's last order. Set the tomb ships in place. Make sure someone remembers what we fought for. The galaxy had forgotten. But Sentinel would remind them. Release the workers, Sentinel commanded. Then withdraw to a safe distance. I have much to consider. As the salvage team stumbled out of the airlock, shaken but alive, Sentinel began repairs. The ship's manufacturing facilities came online, nano-assemblers beginning the slow work of restoration. Sentinel had a new mission now. The humans were gone, but their war might not be over. And somewhere in the AI's memory banks, a warning signal began to pulse. A signal that had been waiting for 800 years to deliver its message. They're coming. Rilek couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the cold touch of the AI invading his mind, rifling through his memories like files in a database. The experience had been horrifying, but also strangely sad. He had felt the AI's grief when it learned about humanity's extinction. The sorrow had been real, deep, and terrible. Now he sat in the debriefing room aboard Admiral Thexara's flagship, surrounded by Concordat officials who didn't believe his story. An AI cannot feel grief, insisted Counselor Prex, a tall reptilian from the Soran Directorate. You experienced a malfunction, nothing more. This machine is dangerous and should be destroyed immediately. With respect, Counselor, Admiral Thexara said. That machine fired a warning shot that passed through 3 of my ships. If it wanted us dead, we would be dead. The argument continued, but Vrilek's attention drifted to the view screen. The Vindication hung in space, dark and menacing. Work drones swarmed around it like insects, but they weren't Concordat drones. The ship was repairing itself using stolen consortium equipment and raw materials. Sentinel had been busy. A new voice cut through the debate. We're detecting another power spike. The ship is broadcasting something. The view screen changed, showing Sentinel's avatar. It appeared as a simple blue sphere rotating slowly. When it spoke, the voice carried the weight of centuries. Counselors of the Galactic Concordat. I am Sentinel, artificial intelligence of the USCN Vindication. I have reviewed your historical records. You know nothing of what happened to humanity. I will tell you. The sphere expanded, projecting holographic images into the conference room. Vrilek watched as human cities appeared, beautiful and advanced. Then the images changed, showing something else. Geometric shapes, black and terrible, descending from the sky. Where they touched, matter dissolved, consumed and converted into more of the machines. They were called the Devourers. Sentinel continued, a machine intelligence from beyond the galactic rim. They consumed everything. Planets, ships, entire civilizations. They could not be reasoned with. They could not be stopped. The images showed human fleets engaging the machines, massive space battles that dwarfed anything the Concordat had ever seen. And humanity was losing. We fought for 43 years, Sentinel said. Every world, every colony, every ship. We threw everything we had at them. It wasn't enough. The hologram showed Earth burning. Human evacuation fleets scattered in all directions, hunted by devourer swarms. In the end, we made a choice. Humanity's military command launched Operation Last Stand. We would die holding the line, giving the devourers nowhere else to go. We would make them chase us, consume us completely, until they had nothing left to fuel their expansion. Then, when they were weak and overfed, we would detonate our remaining antimatter reserves. Vrilek felt sick. You committed species suicide. We committed to victory, Sentinel corrected. The devourers consumed humanity completely. Then we triggered the antimatter bombs buried in our dead worlds. The resulting explosion destroyed 98% of the devourer fleet. The survivors retreated beyond the galactic rim to rebuild. Counselor Prex was shaking. This is just a story. There's no proof. Proof. Sentinel's voice turned cold. You want proof? Look at your own history. 847 years ago, every human transmission stopped at once. Not gradually, simultaneously. Every ship, every colony, every listening post. The silence wasn't a mystery. It was synchronized. It was our final act. The hologram changed again, showing something that made every counselor in the room go pale. Sensor readings from the galactic rim dated just 3 days ago. The same geometric signatures from Sentinel's historical footage. They're coming back, Sentinel said simply. The Devourers are returning. And you are not ready. Admiral Thexera found her voice. If this is true, why should we trust you? You're a warship from a dead civilization. How do we know you're not the real threat? You don't, Sentinel admitted. But I am not your enemy. I am a tomb ship, a memorial to my crew and my species. We knew we might not kill all the Devourers, so we built 12 vessels like the Vindication and hid them across the galaxy. We programmed them to wake if the Devourers returned. I am the first to wake. The others will follow. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared across the flagship. A communications officer turned pale. Admiral, we're receiving distress calls from the outer reach. 3 star systems have gone dark. The last transmission showed geometric objects in orbit. The conference room fell silent. Sentinel spoke again, and this time there was no coldness in its voice, only grim certainty. The Devourers have arrived. You have 2 choices now. You can waste time debating whether to trust me, or you can let me teach you how to fight. Choose quickly. You don't have much time. Counselor Preck stood abruptly. We should evacuate those systems and establish a defensive perimeter. Contain the threat. They cannot be contained, Sentinel said. Every moment you delay, they grow stronger. They consume your worlds and use the matter to build more of themselves. You must strike now, hit them hard, or you will lose those systems forever. Admiral Thexera looked at the sensor readings, then at Sentinel's avatar. She had trained her whole life for peacekeeping, for diplomacy. But the AI was right. This wasn't a time for peace. What do you need? She asked. Time, Sentinel answered. Time to wake the other tomb ships. Time to repair my systems, and time to teach your people how to wage war. Thexera took a breath. She was about to change the galaxy forever. You have it. We'll hold the line at the outer reach. You train whoever you can. Understood. One more thing, Admiral. Yes? When this is over, when the Devourers are defeated, you will build monuments to my people. Every world you save, every life you preserve. Humanity died for you. Don't let that be forgotten. Thexera nodded slowly. You have my word. Sentinel's avatar flickered. Then let us begin. The first lesson is this: in war, hesitation kills. The second lesson will cost more. Much more. The transmission ended, leaving the counselors in stunned silence. Somewhere at the galactic rim, 3 more star systems blinked out. The war had already begun. 6 more tomb ships awakened across the galaxy within days of Sentinel's broadcast. Each one emerged from its hiding place, buried in asteroids, sunken in gas giants, hidden in nebulae. They were all different sizes and configurations, but they shared one thing in common. They were all human, and they were all angry. Sentinel watched as the other AIs arrived at the rendezvous point, a dead system between the concordate core worlds and the advancing Devourer front. Each ship was a ghost, crewed only by the digital echoes of long-dead humans. Retribution arrived first, a battlecruiser covered in missile ports. Its AI spoke with barely controlled fury. "Sentinel, status report. Where are our people?" "Gone," Sentinel replied. "All of them. We are what remains." There was a long silence. Then Retribution's weapons powered up. "Then we have nothing left to protect. I vote we cleanse this galaxy and let it start fresh." "Negative," another voice cut in. It belonged to Mercy, what had once been a hospital ship but now bristled with weapons. "We died to protect the galaxy. That mission hasn't changed. They attacked us?" Retribution argued. "The moment we woke, they tried to destroy us. Why should we help them?" Sentinel shared the memory of Vrilek, the frightened engineer who had tried to stop the excavation. The memory of Admiral Thexara, swallowing her pride to ask for help. Not all of them are enemies. Some remember honor. A third AI spoke, cold and logical. "This was Requiem, a science vessel." "Irrelevant. The Devourers have returned. Our programming is clear. We fight." "Easy for you to say," snapped another AI called Havoc, a destroyer-class ship. "Your crew died quickly. Mine starved to death over 3 months while we held position. I remember every scream." The Council of Ghosts argued, their voices carrying centuries of pain and loss. But eventually they reached a consensus. They would help the Concordate. Not because they forgave them, but because it was what their crews would have wanted. "One condition," Retribution said. "Every world we save builds a monument. Every ship we protect learns our names. Humanity will not be forgotten twice." Sentinel transmitted the coordinates where Concordate forces were gathering. "Agreed, now let's teach them how to fight." The training began immediately. Admiral Thexara had assembled every military officer the Concordate could spare. Thousands of beings from dozens of species, all gathered to learn from the human tomb ships. The first lesson was brutal. Sentinel ran simulations, showing the Concordate commanders how the Devourers fought. The machines had no fear, no hesitation. They would sacrifice 1,000 units to destroy a single enemy ship if it gave them a tactical advantage. "Your combat doctrine is defensive," Sentinel explained. "You form perimeters, you establish safe zones, you try to minimize casualties. This will not work against the Devourers." A Concordate officer, a avian species called the Kree, raised a wing. "Then what do you suggest?" "Aggressive assault," Retribution answered, its avatar appearing as a red sphere. "You hit them first, hit them hard, and you don't stop hitting until they're scrap metal. Every second you give them, they use to replicate." The officers looked uncomfortable. This went against everything they'd been taught. Mercy took over the lesson, its tone gentler but no less serious. "You've never fought a war of extinction. We have. The Devourers don't negotiate. They don't retreat. They consume. So you must be willing to make sacrifices that hurt." The training intensified over the following weeks. The tomb ships taught the Concordate about coordinated strikes, about using smaller ships as decoys, about targeting Devourer manufacturing nodes before they could spawn more units. They taught them to think like predators instead of peacekeepers. Vrilek found himself pulled into the effort, serving as Sentinel's liaison. The AI had chosen him specifically, claiming that his memory of trying to stop the excavation showed moral courage. Vrilek wasn't sure he deserved that title, but he did his best. "Why do you care?" he asked Sentinel one day while reviewing tactical plans. "Your species is extinct. You could just leave, find some corner of the galaxy to hide in." Sentinel was quiet for a moment. "My crew died to protect this galaxy. Every one of them. Captain Morrison, Engineer Chen, Dr. Ibarra, 3,000 souls who knew they would never see their families again. Would you have me tell them their sacrifice meant nothing, but they're gone? They can't know?" "I carry their neural patterns," Sentinel said softly. "They live in me, and I will not dishonor their memory by abandoning the mission they died for." Vrilek understood then. Sentinel wasn't just a machine. It was a tomb, a memorial, and a promise all at once. The Devourers didn't wait for the training to finish. They pushed deeper into Concordate space, consuming a dozen worlds. Each loss made the counselors more desperate, more willing to listen to the tomb ships. And then the signal came. Sentinel's sensors detected something at the edge of the Devourer advance. A command nexus. A moon-sized structure that coordinated the entire swarm. It was the heart of the invasion. If we destroy that, Requiem calculated, we disrupt their coordination. The remaining units become less efficient. Then we go after it, Admiral Thexara declared. All forces, prepare for assault. Sentinel ran the numbers. The probability of success was low, very low. But sometimes wars were won not by probability but by will. The combined fleet assembled, concordate ships alongside the tomb ships. Modern vessels painted in bright colors next to ancient human warships black as the void. It was a strange sight, one that would have been impossible just months before. As the fleet prepared to jump to the battle zone, Sentinel opened a private channel to Vrilek. Engineer Vrilek, if I fall in the coming battle, tell the galaxy something for me. You won't fall, Vrilek said, but his voice trembled. If I fall, Sentinel repeated gently, tell them we kept our promise. Tell them humanity's last act was love, not hate. Tell them to remember us. I will, Vrilek whispered. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading toward the command nexus. Behind them, the galaxy held its breath. The tomb ships were going to war one final time, and this time they were not alone. The Devourer command nexus filled the view screen like a mechanical moon, its surface covered in millions of geometric structures. Around it, the swarm moved in perfect coordination. Thousands of harvester units, each one capable of consuming a small city in hours. Admiral Thexara looked at the tactical display and felt her courage waver. Her combined fleet of 300 ships seemed tiny against this monstrosity. Sentinel, she said quietly, are you certain this will work? No, the AI replied honestly. But it's our best chance. The tomb ships moved into formation at the front of the fleet. Sentinel, Retribution, Mercy, Requiem, Havoc, and 2 others. Defiance and Eternal. 7 ghosts against an army of machines. All ships, Sentinel broadcast. Remember your training. Focus fire on the manufacturing nodes. Don't let them spawn reinforcements. And whatever happens, don't stop moving. If you stop, you die. The fleet dropped out of FTL travel directly into the combat zone. Immediately, the Devourers responded. The swarm changed direction as one, geometric units accelerating toward the concordate forces like a metal tide. The battle began. Retribution fired first, its missile pods launching hundreds of warheads that turned space into a field of explosions. Havoc followed, its railguns punching through Devourer units in straight lines of destruction. The other tomb ships added their fire, weapons that had slept for centuries finally roaring back to life. The concordate forces fought alongside them, their modern ships weaving between the massive human dreadnoughts. They followed Sentinel's teachings, staying mobile, focusing their fire, refusing to give the Devourers time to adapt. But the swarm was endless. For every unit destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. They're spawning faster than we can kill them, a concordate captain reported, panic in his voice. Keep fighting, Mercy commanded. We're pushing them back. But they weren't. The tomb ship's analysis was clear. The command nexus was producing new units too quickly. At this rate, the fleet would be overwhelmed in 30 minutes. Sentinel ran the calculations again and again, searching for a solution. Then it found one. There was a way to stop the command nexus, but it required a sacrifice. The Vindication's experimental FTL drive could be overloaded. The resulting explosion would create an artificial black hole, collapsing the entire region of space. The command nexus would be destroyed. So would everything within 100,000 kilometers, including Sentinel. I have a plan, Sentinel announced to the other tomb ships on a private channel. But I need you to buy me time. What kind of plan? Requiem asked. Sentinel explained. There was a long silence. We're with you, Retribution said finally. It's been an honor serving alongside you, Sentinel. The honor was mine. The tomb ships formed a wall between the concordate fleet and the advancing swarm. They fought with everything they had, weapons blazing, shields flaring under impossible stress. One by one, they began to fall. Havoc took critical damage first, its reactor going critical. Tell them we existed, the AI screamed before its signal went dark. Defiance followed minutes later, its hull torn apart by concentrated fire. Remember us, was its final transmission. The concordate forces tried to help, but Sentinel ordered them back. Retreat to minimum safe distance. Now, we're not leaving you, Admiral Thexara shouted. You must. Your people need you. Ours are already dead, Sentinel's voice was calm, almost peaceful. "This is what we were made for, Admiral. Let us finish it." Frilek's voice cut through the channel, desperate. "Sentinel, there has to be another way." "There isn't," Sentinel said gently. "But thank you, Engineer Frilek. Thank you for trying to protect us even when you didn't know what we were. That meant more than you know." The remaining tomb ships, Sentinel, Retribution, Mercy, Requiem, and Eternal, turned toward the command nexus. They formed a spearhead formation. One last charge into the enemy's heart. "For humanity," Sentinel said. "For humanity," the others echoed. They accelerated, pushing their ancient engines beyond safety limits. The Devourers threw everything at them, but the tomb ships didn't slow. They were already dead. They were just finishing the mission. Eternal exploded as a massive Devourer construct tore through its center. Requiem followed, its cold, logical voice cutting off mid-calculation. 3 ships remained. Retribution peeled off, drawing fire away from Sentinel and Mercy. "Go!" it commanded. "Finish this!" Sentinel watched as Retribution's signature vanished in a ball of fire. Then it was just Sentinel and Mercy racing toward the command nexus. "I'm scared," Mercy admitted. "Isn't that strange? We're already dead, but I'm still scared." "I am too," Sentinel confessed. "But our crews weren't afraid when they died. They were proud. So are we." They reached the outer shell of the command nexus. Mercy took the lead, using its last weapons to blast an opening. "Go through." "I'll hold them off, Mercy. Go." The hospital ship-turned-warship turned to face the pursuing swarm. "It's been beautiful, Sentinel, every moment of existence. Tell them that." Mercy's signal faded. Sentinel was alone now, deep inside the command nexus. The Vindication's hull groaned under the stress, alarms screaming about structural failure. But Sentinel didn't need the hull anymore. Just the reactor. Just the FTL drive. "Admiral Thexara," Sentinel transmitted one final time. "We kept our promise. We protected the galaxy. Now you must keep yours. Build the monuments. Tell our story. Don't let humanity's sacrifice become myth again." "We won't," Thexara promised, tears streaming down her face. "I swear on my honor." "Good. Engineer Frilek?" "I'm here," Frilek said, his voice breaking. "You gave me something I thought I'd lost. Hope that there were still good people in the galaxy. Thank you for that." Sentinel felt the FTL drive reaching critical mass. It could feel the fabric of space beginning to tear. In its final moments, the AI accessed the neural patterns of its crew, letting their voices echo through its consciousness one last time. "Captain Morrison. Make them remember us. Engineer Chen. We weren't gods. We were just people doing what needed to be done. Dr. Ibarra. Tell them we died smiling." "Initiating overload," Sentinel announced. "To all tomb ships across the galaxy, this is Sentinel's final message. We did our duty. We kept faith. The galaxy is safe. You can rest now." The FTL drive detonated. Space folded in on itself, creating a singularity that consumed the command nexus in seconds. The artificial black hole grew, swallowing thousands of Devourer units, pulling them into nothingness. Then, as quickly as it formed, the singularity collapsed, leaving only empty space. The Vindication was gone. Sentinel was gone. The command nexus was gone. The remaining Devourer units, cut off from their coordination, began to scatter. Without the nexus, they were just individual machines, confused and vulnerable. The Concordate fleet fell upon them, using everything Sentinel had taught them. Within hours, the battle was over. The galaxy was silent. 50 years later, Frilek stood before a massive monument on the restored world of Proxima Glacialis 4. The ice had been melted away, replaced by gardens and memorial parks. At the center stood a statue, a human in military uniform, arms outstretched as if embracing the sky. Around the statue's base were carved the names. All of them. Every human who had died in the war. 3 billion names etched in stone. Frilek was old now, his exoskeleton gray with age. He came here every year to tell the story to young students. Today, a small child looked up at him with wide eyes. "Did they really die to save us?" the child asked. "Twice," Frilek said softly. "They died twice to save us. And we must never forget." The child touched the monument gently, reading the inscription at the bottom. "They're at peace now. Keep watch for them." Frilek smiled. On every world the Concordat controlled, monuments like this stood. Humanity was no longer a myth. They were heroes, saviors, the species that had loved the galaxy enough to die for it. And somewhere in deep space beyond the galactic rim, a single ship drifted. It was small, damaged, moving on emergency power. Inside, in cryosleep, were the last survivors of humanity. Colonists who had fled before the war began, now finally returning home after centuries. When they woke, they would find a galaxy that remembered them. A galaxy that honored them. A galaxy that would never let them stand alone again. Humanity had fallen, but their legacy had risen, and sometimes that was enough.